In this lesson, I'm going to be covering one of my favorite things about the ATS software. I like all of it, but I really like this one. This is a new feature for ATS 5 called institutional mode. Very official. So right down here, you notice that you got this little button here, has this little kind of like institutional bank looking building here. If you click this button, magic happens. Click it and give it a second to refresh. Boom. We got a change of color scheme that just looks cool. Honestly, that's the only reason that we changed it. There's no utility value. It looks cool, but we have other components to ATS. Now, these components are not what I would call core ATS framework. Core framework is going to be boxes, expansion lines, liquidity lines. Those three components make up the ATS base indicator. These are enhancements in institutional mode, extra little tools that you can use to give you a even further, deeper insight into the market, into the mind of the banks, but give you just that extra little edge as you get more advanced. Now, you probably want to start, if you're new to trading, you want to start with our simplified view without institutional mode. But as you get familiar with the basic concepts, you get used to looking at those charts, then it makes sense to go into institutional mode. Let me explain these other components here. Now, there's three different things that change here besides the color scheme. Okay, we have these red lines right here that have these dotted red lines that go to the flat red lines with these numbers. You have those on the tops and bottoms of these boxes pointing back to boxes, so we'll explain those. You have these numbers right here where it says 1, 2. You know, we have those all over the place. Right here, you said 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we also have these blocks right here that also appear. So I'm going to explain what each one of these things is and explain to you how it works. So starting, let's talk about these blocks. These are what we call institutional levels. And what these are they're simply marking what we call inefficiencies in the market. Now, an inefficiency in the market happens when price moves rapidly. Okay, it just moves, it goes really fast. It leaves kind of almost like free space in the market. Now, from a market maker's perspective, they want to keep very orderly, efficient markets to make their bread and butter money, which is spread. So that's that little markup that they add to every buy and sell position that constantly just flows in. They want the market to just go up and down, up and down, up and down. That's why they like to keep it in contraction and then expansion ranges. They can collect a lot of spread. But when the market finally starts to move, it starts to get less and less and less efficient. But that is also a marker for us when we see inefficiencies start to form to show themselves that the banks are on the run. Something could be happening that we could take action on and potentially do a good trade, right? So going back here, these institutional levels, you have these dark ones, and then you also have the green ones here. The dark ones signify bearish institutional activity, meaning to the short side, and the green ones signal bullish institutional activity. So when we see these kick off a move, they're going to give you these three different levels right here, and then the center line. The center line is the most important one to pay attention to. The center line, when you see a big aggressive move like this that's trading away from a value point, if you're going to trade that, ideally you want to see it hold above the center line here, because that shows that there's a lot of commitment on the institutional level. If there wasn't a lot of commitment, then they would let it trade back all the way into the bottom here, because they want to keep it in that tight range and collect more spread and keep balancing their portfolio and doing the things they do in the manipulation part of the market, the expansion phase. So when they start to let these inefficiencies hold and not recover them, that can be an indication that you're going into a more extended move. Now, as you can see, this market right here is just expanding back and forth. It can still leave inefficiencies in an expansion, but what it's telling you is that the aggressiveness is amping up, and it's just really a cue to pay attention, and also a good place to manage trades. You'll notice that we have these bullish levels holding this trend in place until it reverses up here. You notice you get really fine-tuned right here. We had this slight bearish institutional level right here at the top. and then you could see that it held, and then we had this massive spike down. This was news. You want to be careful around news. You're mostly not going to catch a lot of these trades unless you're in on the longer time frame. But it just depends on what time frame you're trading. So these bearish institutional levels, the same concept. You had this one candle that traveled a long distance, opened up here, closed down here. That's an inefficient candle that's leaving that space behind. So as this market goes down, if you're trading it, again, you really don't want to see the market trade much above these center lines as that move kicks off. When you start trading up into those and around them, then you're typically going back into contraction phase, and you just got to be careful. So those are the institutional levels. The next one I'm going to talk about is the order block projections. That's these red lines right here. These are super cool. So let me first explain kind of the basis of how we came up with these. When you have a market that's contracting and then going into the expansion, the size of the expansion, those legs from top to bottom, show us the range of accumulation that the market makers are currently in. Okay. What we've noticed over time is that the size of that range, by the time the expansion legs are done, no matter how many it has, the size of that range that is left over, if you take it and you add 100% to the top of it, that typically when you finally break out long or short, it'll go at least 100% if it's in the trend phase, typically. If it goes anything under 100%, a lot of times you're coming back into the expansion range because the expansion legs do get bigger and bigger. Hopefully you're following all my finger logic here. So hopefully you could visualize that. So let me go into here and I'll show you. We got some good examples in here. So we'll take a look at this one right here that we're back at. So as you see right here, when we came out, we broke out of this box and then we came through this liquidity line. This liquidity line triggered an order block projection. This order block projection is based on the measurement from this liquidity line to the highest point in the cycle from when this box started. This is where they all start, okay? So if you measure to the top to that liquidity line, it's about 27 pips or so. And you'll notice that right here, that's our order block projection, goes 100% of that distance from that liquidity down based on that measurement. And we have these numbers here that are telling us that distance. So we can make projections if we're trying to trade out to one of these order blocks. We know how far it is and how much potential profit is in the trade. Now, as you can see right here, that the market traded into that order block projection, but really wasn't ready to take off. It pulled back, came back, and then held above that order block projection. Remember what I said is that if it doesn't hold above, then likely it's coming back into the expansion range. Well, where's the expansion range? It's right here where the expansion line is. Right here inside it. It comes back up in. Now, if you hit this level right here, potentially, in this case, obviously the trend was down. But think of this reverse the other way. If you hit that expansion line, then you could look for when we come up through the opposite side of the expansion right here. Here's our breaking point, our liquidity line. These are correlated all the time with liquidity lines. So make sure you understand that. When you come up through, it gives you that order block projection because now the range is bigger. It was only from here to here on the last one, but now it is from this liquidity line right here down to this low. That is the size of the cycle to the liquidity line. That is about 66 pips. What do we have here? There's your order block projection, and it says 66 pips away. So for whatever reason, if you were trading long here, you know that this cycle that you're working within that cycle, that when it takes off, you're going to go a minimum of 66 pips from this liquidity line right here. A minimum. So as you can see, this traded, look at all the way up. We have liquidity here, but also it's just right under that order block projection. So what does that tell us? Wasn't just yet for this. This wasn't just yet ready to go into that trend phase. And then we had that news come out and we just blasted all the way down to the downside liquidity down here, and it's still moving, and we start a new cycle right here. But these order block projections give you areas not only to potentially control risk, but they give you areas to shoot for when you're in profit. You know that if you're trading a cycle, you're trading an expansion leg in expectation of the trend phase, you have these order block projections that pop in and give you that projected price, and it gives you a very, very good solid place to take your profits. You have an exact number that you're looking for. It shows you the amount of pips. You could add that to wherever you actually got in. And you know exactly what your upside is that you're looking for. So just another way to control your risk management, your risk reward ratios, all those things. So very, very cool. No one else has anything like this. This is all proprietary to us. And you guys could see that these are tools that help you. They are enhancements to the ATS methodology, but they are not core framework. It's still built off of the box, and they always point back to the box that they're referencing. Now, the last thing is our numbers here. See, it says one right here, we got 1, 2, 3, 4. What this is it's simply numbering the expansion legs that are confirmed. That is it. It's very simple. It's showing you that this was the high of the first leg. That came in when we came down through this liquidity line. It put a 1 there. And then as we came up through this liquidity line right here, it put a 2 there. They do lag a little bit, but in hindsight, it helps you look back to see how many legs were in the cycle, especially when you approach previous framework. That's a little bit more of an advanced technique, which you'll learn later on. But it just helps you have a clean visual of the numbers of legs that are happening in the market, and especially on the cycles that you're interacting with. So that is institutional mode. You get those little enhancements that give you that little added edge, but just make sure that you're ready for them. Don't put this on too soon. Make sure you learn the basic concepts. Trade those for at least 30 days or so before you really dig into this, because you don't want any more to process in your mind until you have the basics down.